Welcome everyone to Hue City. I am still in Vietnam, not doing live streams, but I thought I would come to you as I am traveling a bit on my own right now, away from the delegation. It's a beautiful park here. I just got done at Ho Chi Minh Museum. Here in Hue City. A beautiful museum with just all kinds of interesting history. I do highly recommend it for those who don't know. Ho Chi Minh is the founder, the liberator of Vietnam. He was the first president of Vietnam. He died in 1969, too young, before Vietnam was liberated from the United States. But he did live to see the French ousted, and he was critical. He is the thought leader, if we are going to use that term. He is the #1 influence over the politics and economic development of Vietnam. He is the founder of socialism in Vietnam. And his journey is quite extraordinary. He went from a relatively middle-class life in Vietnam, spent some time of his childhood here in Hue, and then ended up traveling the world. He and his family all were very much against French colonial rule. He ended up traveling the world. He went to the United States for a period. He also spent time, and here is just another great part of this park here. A lot of history here, especially against the French. But Ho Chi Minh traveled the world. He went to the United States. He spent time in France. And he came back and forth to Vietnam to help aid in the liberation struggle here. And oh, is it so relevant now, this idea of liberation from colonialism, as Palestine remains on fire, remains under constant bombardment in Gaza from the Israeli occupation forces. And so it really is inspiring to come here to see an entire people liberate themselves and see the results of what can happen. The beauty, the prosperity. Ho Chi Minh was a huge part of that. Ho Chi Minh is the founder of Vietnam. And to see a whole museum dedicated to him in a relatively small city, Hue, but very important because it was the imperial capital. It was where the French had incredible control over the livelihoods of the Vietnamese people, where people lived in misery and squalor, very similar to how Palestinians live right now in Gaza. That was the condition of Vietnamese people for many, many years, decades upon decades, from the mid to late 19th century into the mid 20th century. And then, of course, the United States collaborated with the French for many, many years, until there was a full-scale bombing campaign not dissimilar to how Israel is treating the Palestinians right now, with their bombing campaign in Gaza, killing scores of children. In truth, nothing can compare to what the United States has done. Hey, how's it going? Nothing can compare to what the United States has done, of course, but we all know that the United States is aiding and abetting Israel's war crimes as we speak right now. The videos going around of children losing their families, their parents, their homes. This is a long process, 70 plus years now in Palestine, and Vietnam has a lot of lessons that we can learn. In Vietnam, you see what can happen when people are able to liberate themselves from the kind of oppression, from the kind of domination, the occupation, illegal now under international law. It wasn't always illegal. There was no international framework when Ho Chi Minh and the Vietnamese people began their resistance against French domination, and then of course Japanese, and then U.S. domination. There wasn't a framework until after World War II. And even then, of course, the United States never followed it, jumping in right as that framework was instituted to try to quote-unquote defeat communism, which really was just a dog whistle for establishing dominance, establishing hegemony over the Asia-Pacific region. That's what the United States really wanted, and they failed here in Vietnam. So, with all that said, everyone is talking about Israel right now. Everyone is talking about what Israel is doing to Palestine. Everyone is debating who is in the right, who is in the wrong. Is Hamas good or bad? Right? Everyone's debating this. But of course you have Joe Biden giving speeches, right? He's giving these horrific speeches talking about supporting Israel, but not going too far. And I think the situation is pretty clear right now. Joe Biden, the neocons, of course, the big monopolists, the bankers, they are in a real bind. Because I do not think that they expected to get into a quagmire in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, in West Asia, while they were attempting to defeat Russia and Ukraine, while they were attempting to encircle China. And what's so interesting about this is that as the United States has been sending, aircraft carrier groups, naval forces, a couple thousand, as Joe Biden attempts to push through $105 billion to Israel, as Israel continues its bombardment, delays its ground operation, but refuses to talk about any kind of negotiated settlement, any kind of even ceasefire, what you have is China holding the Belt and Road Forum in Beijing, participation of 150 countries. It went amazingly. Vladimir Putin was there. They all came out during the opening ceremony together, Putin and Xi Jinping, side by side. A real statement. And of course, while there wasn't huge news with the Belt and Road Initiative, really just the establishment of more agreements, more infrastructure, development, Africa, Asia, Latin America, well, it really wasn't a sea change at the Belt and Road Forum. What you do have, actually, I'm going to go around this fountain. I don't want to get my phone. I don't want this phone to get ruined here. And so we'll get a nice shot of the river. But I don't think the contrast could be any more stark. And of course, China and Russia are working incredibly hard diplomatically, too, on the question of Palestine, on the question of this Israel-Palestine escalation. This escalation from Israel, this attempt to essentially destroy Palestine entirely and completely in Gaza. China and Russia have been working tirelessly. China has called, of course, for a ceasefire and a diplomatic solution, and Russia proposed to the United Nations Security Council, proposed that the United Nations establish a ceasefire framework and vote on it. And what happened? Well, you know what happened. The United States declined. Here's the Perfume River, by the way. You can see it right here. So the United States declined. The United States voted against it. So did France. So did the UK, of course, the typical subjects. And of course, it was China and Russia on the right side of history, along with Mozambique and a few other countries. So you see where the lines are being drawn historically, geopolitically right now. You have Russia and China on the side of peace, and of course, many of their global South partners. And you have the United States and its Western vassals on the side of endless, permanent war. Permanent war. We're not just talking about endless war, we're talking about permanent war. So, this is going to be ugly, and it's unclear, right, whether Israel will wage a ground invasion. And perhaps by the time this video comes out, they're already doing it. But I think the point is that when Israel talks about a ground invasion, what they're really talking about is eradication and extermination. Because if anyone knows anything about the situation in Gaza, you know that the war is ongoing. So similar to how Ukraine didn't start in 2014, even, right? Or how Ukraine didn't start in 2022, but we could trace it back to 2014, even earlier, 2008, Orange Revolution. We could go back on and on and on when it comes to Ukraine. Similar to how the war, the growing war against China by the United States didn't start in 2012, 11 with the pivot to Asia. Hell, it didn't start during the Trump administration. A lot of people like to cite that in the West, that Trump, oh, look at these escalations. It didn't start with any of that. It started in 1949 when the United States did not support or recognize the People's Republic of China at the United Nations. Instead, they recognized the government in exile under the KMT at the time, under Chiang Kai-shek. They recognized that government, the Republic of China, which was located in what is now known as Taiwan. So that's when it started. The United States, of course, during that period, threatened nuclear war against China, killed a lot of Chinese people in Korea when millions of Chinese volunteers went to Korea to fight on the side of Korean liberation, on the side of the north, of the communists. Killed 200,000, right? 200,000 Chinese died in that period out of the millions that volunteered. So all of this is to say is that it didn't start here. Of course, the United States was waging a Cold War in the Soviet Union. And all of these neo-Nazis and fascists that the United States has been supporting, especially since 2014, we know this is a long-standing policy. So similar in Palestine. Gaza has been at war. Israel has been waging war on Palestinians in Gaza and really the region proper, Palestine proper, for decades, dating back to the Nakba, dating back to the Mandate. And then, of course, the numerous and just astounding number of incursions and assaults on the livelihoods and on the, lives, the existence of Palestine and the Palestinian people. So I'm just going to keep showing you this park. It's really beautiful here, really quiet right now in Hue City. I believe I'm recording this on a weekend day. But as you can see, when you get behind me, the city, it's very busy back there. It's very busy. I don't know if you can all see that, but it's very busy. It's very busy. I'm actually going to have to get back on the sidewalk. I'm probably not going to cross, though, because the biking culture here is intense. I mean, we're talking not a lot of rules of the road, right? You got to kind of just know how to cross, know how to walk across these streets. So I'm going to finish this video in the park. I get astounded. I really get flabbergasted, really, on the level of ignorance in the West, on the historical basis for geopolitics. And I've been seeing so many debates all across social media. Of course, these are happening in people's homes, across the United States and the EU countries. There's a lot of debating going on about Hamas and about the legitimacy of Palestinian resistance right now, about, is it hostages or is it prisoners of war? And I think all these things are really good to debate, of course. We need to have this discussion. But I find sometimes, and I find this to be very true about basically all geopolitical conflicts that the United States is heavily involved with, is that when this history is ignored, when this context is ignored, we tend to focus on the minutia, right? Is Hamas worth supporting? Is Hamas correct in what it did in this operation? Is Israel, right? I see even people who are supporting the Palestinian side talk about, Israel needs to be held to account. And I think we have to recognize that this is part of a global system, what's happening in Palestine. It's part of a global, neo-colonial, imperialist, neocon-run, led system dominated by the interests of bankers and corporate elites. These are who benefit. These are who are driving these conflicts. And so when we talk about Israel needs to be held accountable, or, is Hamas the correct leadership to support for Palestinian people, it completely misses the point. The point is that if you're on the wrong side of history if you support Israeli war crimes, number one. But it's even deeper than that. It's not just about, do you support Israeli war crimes? It's how do you position this conflict in the world situation? And we need to position it in the neocon, banker-led war machine led by the United States. Because that's what's going on. That's why it always explodes. It gets worse and worse for Gaza, of course. And the same is going to go for the rest of these hotspots. Worse and worse and worse it's going to all become. Ukraine is out of the conversation now, but the situation there isn't going to get better. It's not going to get better in Ukraine, not until Russia achieves its strategic objectives. It achieves victory, essentially. Total victory. And the situation in the Pacific is not going to get better until China and the countries in the region have total sovereignty. I'm here in Vietnam right now, and I can tell you that the United States, while there is a closer relationship between Vietnam and the United States, while of course Vietnam and China have also a close relationship, all of that doesn't really matter because it's the United States that acts as a rogue regime. The United States does not respect Vietnam's sovereignty. It doesn't matter how many disputes China and Vietnam have. It doesn't matter because the United States doesn't respect those countries working it out themselves. I was looking at Da Nang Bay, and there were the USS Reagan was right there, in between Vietnam and China. The United States has no right to be there. Oh, but how wrong we are. The United States sees itself as having the right to do whatever it wants in the Pacific. It doesn't ask permission. What it does is it tries to bribe. It's trying to bribe Vietnam with whatever it has left. It tries to bribe regional countries and strong-arm them into supporting this. But surely these countries, no matter what you hear, they are not being asked, they are being told, because the overall objective is to militarize the region against China. It's not working. Surely it's not working. Because if it were, Vietnam and China would not be as close as they are economically. There would be a more military-to-military conflict between the two. The parties would not meet as much as they do. Xi Jinping is going to come to Hanoi very soon, probably right after I leave Vietnam. He met with the president of Vietnam in Beijing during the Belt and Road Forum on the sidelines. So those things would not happen if the United States was successful in its bid to divide these two countries. But we have to understand that it doesn't matter if the United States is successful or not. It's going to do what it wants. And what it wants to do is occupy this region and to put it back under its dominion. It's a losing cause. And the same goes for Ukraine, Eastern Europe, of course, the Eurasian region as a whole. The United States wants to put it under its grip again, knowing full well that it's not going to succeed. So Palestine is no different. Palestine is part of this growing end of U.S. hegemony in this part of the world, in West Asia. No matter how many Palestinians Israel kills, no matter how much money the United States gives Israel, this is also a losing proposition. They thought they killed Arab nationalism. They thought they killed it in the mid-20th century after the '67 war. They thought they destroyed it. But how wrong they also are. The United States, Israel, miscalculation. There's only so much beating down, so much stomping on the necks of people of this region until they come for you. And they're coming. Believe me, Hezbollah is coming. The Arab people, the Muslims, Iranians, they're coming. They will come. They will defend themselves. They have the right to defend themselves. This is their region. It's their resources. Palestinians are their brothers, their sisters. And that's the truth. That's what it means to stand on the right side of history. It's acknowledging this history. So, it's going to be a bloodbath, unfortunately. It's going to be a bloodbath. The Palestinians are losing, family after family, child after child, home after home in Gaza. We're going to see, by the time this is over, no doubt we'll be getting up into 5 figures worth of deaths. We're already up to over 4,000. Estimated likely over 1,000 children. We're getting into really ugly territory, and this ground operation, which may or may not happen, I am of the belief that the United States cannot afford this politically. that if the United States allows Israel to conduct basically a mass genocide campaign, and here you see the busyness here, look at that. I'm gonna have to cross that. So that's why I'm not walking any further during this video. But the United States is having to essentially negotiate whether it's going to allow Israel to conduct a campaign of extermination, a total Nakba 2.0 in Gaza, or whether it is going to try to arrest this process at least until after 2024. And then whoever is the next president, Biden, Trump, whoever, they can allow Israel to do what they want totally and fully. Because as Associated Press and others are reporting, it's quite clear that this is not about strategy. This is about tactics. The United States does not disagree with anything Israel does to the Palestinian people, Hamas, whatever you say, they don't care. The neocons, Washington consensus establishment, foreign policy establishment, Israel is on their team. And that's, come on, we all know that. So it's not about whether Israel can or cannot do this in totality. It's about when. When will they be allowed? And so that time that's being bought, hopefully, can aid the Palestinian resistance and also help us prepare, continue to be out on the streets. We see Romania, New York City, everywhere. Palestine, people are standing up for Palestine. And that's a beautiful thing. Protests, thousands, if not millions of people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people are protesting in support of Palestine because they know. That's why you don't see big pro-Israel demonstrations. I said on Twitter, oh, you don't see pro-Israel demonstrations. And why do I say that? Because they're not protests. Even when people come out in support of Israel, is that a protest? That's not a protest. What are they protesting? The West supports them. The United States supports them. They're armed to the teeth. Their side has, or at least for the most part, has the military advantage, but they of course don't have the advantage of history, being on the right side of history. They can't kill Palestine's resistance because Palestinians will never allow themselves to be eradicated or destroyed, just like any people faced with an occupation force, faced with the dominance and the boot of the colonial yoke on your neck. That's history. No, it's not going to be repeated like that. There will always be resistance. There will always be resistance. So that's why this is a losing venture. Try as you may. It's not going to last forever. Israel's occupation is temporary. So too is U.S. hegemony. That's the period we're living in. It's a temporary feature of history. It's epical. We're living in an epic, and that epic is coming to an end. And look, I'm in Vietnam. It came to an end. They never subdued Vietnam again. I'm not 100% in agreement with Vietnam's policy with the United States. I understand it, but it ended here. It ended in this country. It has ended in many countries. And that resistance, that spirit of resistance that the Vietnamese people have led the way in, and that of course people under the boot of this vicious hegemonic empire, that's going to continue. And so the days are numbered. Tick-tock on the clock for Israel. Tick-tock on the clock for the United States. And no matter what happens from here, whether this video comes out and there's a ground operation, whether there's some kind of temporary ceasefire to give Biden some breathing room, whatever happens, Ukraine comes back on the map for some reason, whatever happens, Taiwan, doesn't matter. Time's up for the empire. Time is up. It's only a matter of time. But I'm out of here, everybody. Gotta head home, or the hotel, I should say. I'll see you all again very soon. I'll be back live as soon as I can when I come back. Hopefully, some good guests. I got Norman Finkelstein in the queue. I'm hoping to, of course, do my regulars with Scott Ritter, Brian Berletic, and others. But a lot of exciting things coming up when I get back come November. And I look forward to sharing it all with you. All right? Peace out, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye from Vietnam.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.